Hello class, welcome back. So in the last video I said that you should Google and understand a bit about server-side rendering, and I've gone ahead and found you a great resource that you can consume that explains all about server-side rendering. This video by this channel called CodeRealm, great channel by the way, I don't know why this guy stopped making videos. So he made this great video that explains everything about server-side rendering and goes really in depth about it and why and when you should use it. I suggest you give it a watch if you want to understand more about it and what Nextjs does basically. Anyway, so I'll put a link of to this in the description. And while you're at it, like, give him a like and also give him a subscribe. Even though he's not making any videos, maybe he's gonna see a lot of people subscribing and be like, hey, I need to get back on the YouTube game. People are calling my name. Anyway, so that's that. All right, so to carry on with our app, let's visit the actual register page on the actual Reddit. And I want to get this blue color. And I also want to get that variant of it when it becomes brighter as you hover it. So what I'm going to do is, let's go to the inspect tool. I'm going to inspect this button. And it's this thing right here. So 0079D3. I'm going to copy that. And what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to create like a swatch or like a couple of shades from it using this tool called Shadow Lord by Noel Delgado. I'll put a link of this as well in the description. And you go ahead and paste that color there and change this value to 20% so that it creates, I think it's 11 shades, right? But I'm going to ignore the white and the black, and I'm going to get just these 9 in the middle, with this one in the middle being the actual 500, which is the main color, and then this would be 100 and this will be 900, and replace the default blue shades in TailwindCSS. And by the way, there's also a 50, which is gonna not be replaced. It's gonna stay as it is, which is kind of like the lightest one. Unfortunately, this tool doesn't have a way for us to copy all of these values just individually. So I'm gonna go ahead and manually copy them, start with this one, and go to our TailwindCSS, tailwindconfig.js, and go inside of the theme extend, and then here create an entry for colors, and inside of that create an entry for blue, and then we'll have 100, and then paste that color in. And I'm gonna manually copy all of them right now and then get back to you. All right, I've got everything now, so I'm gonna save and let's see if that's already reflected. Cool. Okay, so this color is now the same as this one right here. And I also realized that this image on the side is a bit kind of wider, so I'm gonna replace the value for that. So in the register page, so this sidebar, where is it? Yeah, this right here. So this should be W36 instead of 40. Save that. And now it's exactly the same. Cool. And one other thing, I spoke about the app TSX, this one right here, briefly, and we just used it to include the global CSS here. And I just wanted to explain a little bit more. This is basically kind of like a layout for your, every single page will go through this. So if you needed to do something that is kind of consistent across pages, like state management or like some global CSS or anything else, any logic, or like an element of the page that is consistent across all pages, you do it right here. We're going to use it later to do state management and also for example, a navbar, like having a navbar at the top that all pages have it. So you include it there. We're going to use it and you're going to understand a bit more about what the app TSX does. One other thing that I want to do that is similar to the actual Reddit is the get the font, which is, what is it actually? Let me hover over here. Okay, interesting. So this one is different, and then this and these are kind of like the same. So I assume this one is the default. I'm gonna get this IBM Plex Sans font, and I'm not gonna worry about the other one. So let's go and Google IBM Plex Sans. And go to this fonts.google link. And I'm actually going to get all the different sizes or weights. And then later, if I realize one is not used at the end, I'm going to remove it. So I'm just going to grab all the actual sizes that are not italic. And I'm actually going to ignore the 700. I'm sure we're not going to use it. So I'm going to copy this link tag. Actually, I just realized that we need to set up a different file, different to app.tsx, which is a document TSX. So if we go to the next documentation, search for document, here custom document, and what this basically does is that it kind of gives us access to the actual HTML of the page, of any page that we have in our app, and then we can include stuff in the head and stuff like that, which is kind of outside of the JavaScript itself of the app. So don't worry about that too much. Let's just grab this. So copy all of this, and in the pages directory, let's create a new file called _document.tsx and paste all of that in. And I think this needs a type. I think this is document context. Yes, this is document context. So you import that from next document and then you give that type there. So here we want to include our font, and that would be in the head element. So let's actually make this like kind of like a tag that will have children, and then we need to paste that CSS, or not CSS, sorry, the font link there. So copy it, and then let's paste it inside of the head right here. And these tags, because this is JSX, these tags, they need to be self-closing. So do Alt and select both and add a slash right there and save. And now, of course, we need to tell Tailwind to use this font. So what we're going to do is let's go back to our Tailwind config. And here at the top of the theme, I'm going to say font family. And here we get a couple of different font families, but I'm going to use the body one. And here this takes an array of like different priorities of fonts. So you can have like fallback ones. I'm just going to put the IBM one for now. So IBM Plex Sans, and then put a comma here. And I'm going to go to the document.tsx, and in the body tag, give this a class name of font dash, and we get, I think we get it here. So I think we need to save. Actually, if we save, it should build it, and now we should get it as a suggestion. So here we say font dash, and there we go. So we get actual font body. I don't know what's wrong with the line spacing actually in my IDE. So we get font body, and there you go. It says here IBM Plex Sans. How cool is that? So let's say font dash body, save. If we go back to our app, refresh. Do I need to rebuild this? Maybe I do. Okay, so let's stop the client server and run it again. All right, let me now refresh again, and it should change. Cool, I think it's changed. Let me hover. Cool, so we get IBM Plex Sans. All right, so we have the font now. So I realized as well these inputs are a bit like different to the ones on Reddit. It's strange actually. If you open the inspect tool, this becomes a bit thinner, but that's okay. It's the same now. So let's actually change the styling of these inputs to match exactly the styling inside of the actual Reddit. But before we do that, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Cheers. So here we have like a lighter gray and also kind of lighter borders. And as we focus it, it becomes like it's strange actually. Even when we focus and we put the mouse away, that white background goes away, which I don't think is intended. So I'm not gonna have that behavior. And also this label that floats, that's kind of like an external JavaScript dependency. So I'm not gonna worry about it. So let's go back, and also I realized that the padding is a bit more on the top and bottom. So let's go back to our register page. So I'm going to close this, and close this, and scroll down where we have our input right here. I'll give this a BG gray 50, and also give it outline none, so that when we click on it, it doesn't have this black outline, and make this padding like just P-3, so it's going to be 3 on all sides. Now we're going to give it some styling that are based on what is it, pseudo class selectors, things like when it's focused or when it's hovered. So let's start with when it's focused. So if the input is focused, we do focus colon, and now I can add any styling, and we can say bg-white, so that it will have a white background. And the same goes for when it's hovered, so we'll say hover colon bg-white. And then actually this should be fun. Let's look at it. All right, so cool. So when it's focused, it has a white background, and also when it's hovered. And it's not applied to the other ones because we haven't copied these class names. So let's copy all of this and copy that there and there. We're gonna refactor this, so don't worry about it. It's not gonna be this much repetition. Let's look at it now. Cool. So all of them now, if you hover over them, they have a white background. And okay, so I need to change the border. So the border needs to be lighter. So let's go back. So let's change this border gray 400. So Control D, select both. Oh, I'm doing Control F, Control D. And let's just make this 300. Oops. Oh, actually, I'm changing the text up there. Okay, go away, search. So I'm just going to select this, Control D twice. And this should be 300. And that should, okay, that looks better. That looks like almost close to the one on Reddit. Cool. And also, you can change how the color transitions, because here it just snaps to the other color. And you can use this property called transition. So in the class name here, add transition, which tells TailwindCSS you want to update all the transitions. Actually, not all. I believe, let's look at the documentation. I believe transition is just for styling stuff. So let's search in the documentation for transition. It's transition property. So yeah, we get transition, and this applies to border color, background color, border color, color fill, blah, blah, blah. And transition all applies to all. Okay, so this applies to kind of like stylings. So you give transition, and then you give something like this, duration 500, which is half a second, and then that will tell the markup to make this kind of like have a transition with that duration, and then you have whatever stylings that you have. So here it's going to go from blue 600 to BG red 600. Cool. So here we're going to say duration 200 because 500 is too slow. So let's copy that and paste it here, and paste it here as well, and save. And now if we go back, you see that when you hover over it, it slightly changes slowly, and it doesn't just like snap into like just a white background. All right, let's make this form actually send a request to our backend and register the user. But I just realized actually that if we go back to our server code, to the auth.ts inside of the routes, that the validation here is not complete. It's because so let me open Postman. So in Postman, let's go to our collection, go to the auth, register endpoint. And here, so if I send, so let's actually make the email empty and the username empty and send these. We get our errors, but we get them as an array, and they're like the raw errors from TypeORM. Obviously, this is not the behavior that we want, because we want this, okay, actually, no, this is valid credentials. We want this, so that actually, I forgot that I removed the users. We want something like this, that we have exactly just one key and then one value for every field. So that's easy. We can just map these existing errors to an object. But the thing is, I realized also the error messages are not, are not that great. So, and they're not that specific. For example, for the email, it only checks if it's an email. And if it's empty, it's just going to give the same validation error for whether if it's an email or not, because, that's the only rule it has. And an empty email technically is an invalid email, but that's not the best validation message. And this is, by the way, this is one of the reasons why I like to switch back from backend and frontend, because it makes it easier to spot these mistakes and not have to like change a lot after you finish the whole backend. All right, so what I'm going to do here is for is email, I believe it takes, okay, so it takes two things, options and then validation options. We're going to ignore this first options. We're just going to give it undefined. And then for the second one, we're going to give it a message. And the message will say, must be a valid email address. And we're going to have another validation. So I'm just going to copy the length validation from here. And this will have from 1. I mean, technically an email can't be 1, but just give it 1. And this is a maximum of 255. And we'll say email is empty, because that's the error itself. If the length is not, technically it could be more than 255, but that's probably not going to be the case. You can handle that if you want. I'm just going to leave it as email is empty like this. And here for username, this is way too long. And also I realized on the UI, so if we go back to the UI, here it's unnecessary under the username to say username must not be empty, because obviously that's the username. So we can just skip saying the field name, and we could just say, here, must be at least 3 characters long. So that's cool. And also let's give a error message for password. So copy that and paste it here. So this is 6. We'll say must be at least 6 characters long. Cool. So now if we check in Postman, and let's actually remove this and send that request. So you see here for email, we're going to get 2 errors. Constraints, length, email is empty, and is email must be a valid email address. And this is okay, because both are kind of invalid. We didn't pass any of the validation rules. So what we're going to do is actually put the order on purpose like that, because if you change the order here and you save and you send this, I believe it changes here. Okay, let me send it again because it didn't restart properly. Okay, so must be a valid email address. So you see, if I change the order, now I can't get the first one. Right now, actually it's the second one that applies. And that's why I put the order like that. So let's revert the order back. And now what I want to do, I want to like map this into an object and get the first constraint error. So let's go back to our code. I keep like going to the wrong window. So here in the auth, where we check whether we have like any errors in the errors array. So if that's the case, then we're going to return a new object. So we'll create a new object. So here we'll say let mapped errors equals an empty object, and we'll say errors dot for each. Oops, I don't know what was that. For each, and then for each error, we're gonna actually we're gonna create. So we'll say const key equals, and that will be, so if you look here, that will be the property and then we'll say, so key equals error dot property, and const value will be the first constraint. So we'll say, so if we're gonna get it, so this is an object, right? To turn it into an array, we can use object.entries, which will give us like tuples of 2 elements. So don't worry too much about that. You can say object.entries and then pass it the error.constraints, and then take the first one and then take the second one from that first array, or for that first tuple, which is technically an array, but whatever. So here we'll say mapped errors key equals value. And actually this has to be explicitly cast or not cast set as any. So that should work. And now map errors, and this as well needs to be any, so that we can kind of add onto it. All right, so now if we go ahead and like try and send the same request, send this. Okay, I just realized I was checking errors before doing actual validation. That should be under the validate here, my bad. So actually I'm just gonna bring back, okay, I'm just gonna bring that, okay, yeah, that is okay, that should remain as it is. So this should be errors, and then here where we have the errors, that could be an array, we can just say here, we can just paste that logic and then return the mapped errors right there, and then close that and then save, and now it will actually work. Okay, close my thing. All right, so here if I send this, I'm gonna get those 2 errors. Email is taken and username, and now if I send these, I should get the mapped errors, and I get the server error. All right, let's check. Current property 1 of undefined. Okay, because that should be entries, and then these should be outside right there, because that is the one that returns an array and not the error constraints itself, because that's an object. All right, so now this should work. There we go. So we get must be a valid email address. And now if I give an empty email, it should say email is empty. Cool. So that's working. And of course, the same applies to password, less than 6 characters. We get must be at least 6 characters long. All right, so that's the validation being handled properly. So I'm going to actually outsource the logic for this, because maybe we're going to need to use it somewhere else. So I'm going to remove this console log and just cut all of this. And actually, I'm going to make it into a function called map errors. So it will say map errors, and then pass it the errors, and then create that function up here. So we'll say const, I'm going to create it here. If I need it somewhere else, I'm going to create it in its own file. So for now, I'm going to leave it here. So I'll say const map errors equals, it's going to take errors of type, actually it's going to be an array of objects. We know that. So we can just say object error, and then here, object array rather, and just paste all of that logic and return. Actually, I just realized we can use the reduce, so we don't have to create a new object. So what we can do is we can say, actually we could just say, I'm just gonna start typing it. So return errors.reduce, and reduce takes a callback that has 2 values. So yeah, like it says here, previous and current. I'm just gonna call it prev, and then current, or let's just call this error, and then the callback, what we need to do is we just need to say previous and then pass it the error.property as the name of the property, and that equals objects. So this thing right here, objects entry error.constraints, first one and then second element. So this should be any so that it doesn't complain. So any, and then this as well. So any as well here. And now once that's done, we need to say return previous. And here as well, the reduce takes an initial value, which is just an empty object. And now we just return this object. So we can just remove all of this logic. And now it's simplified to this. Let's check if it's still working. Run this. There we go. So everything works. And if I put like a valid email, john@email.com, of course we don't get that. Of course we get that it's taken. And we should get as well validation for username. But actually, no, we need to validate the actual email existing first. So that's okay. All right, so that's validation taken care of, and now we're getting the proper messages. Let's actually consume this from the front end. So let's go to our register TSX component. So let's create our local state variables. So we're gonna get use state. So let's import that. So import from React, the structure use state. Here we're gonna have a couple of things. So we'll have so first thing is the email. So we'll say use state. I'm gonna use the snippet. And this will be email, and this will be an empty string. And then we're going to have as well the username, so username, and this will be an empty string. And by the way, you can do this. So you can do this string like that to give it a type. But since we're already initializing it as an empty string, if you hover over this, it infers that it's a string already. So we don't need to be explicit about it. So that's done for us. And now we're going to have actually... what do we have? We're gonna have another one. So yeah, the email. So use state, and this will be email, and that's an empty string. And then use state. We'll also have the agreement checkbox. So this will be agreement, and this will start as false. And we're gonna have errors potentially. So I'll say const, not const, use state, and this will be errors. And we'll initialize this as an empty object. And here actually we can specify that this will be of type any, because we don't know what kind of errors that we can get in this side of this object. And here, so email, username, this should be password actually, password. And here, password. Cool, so let's give these values to the inputs. So here we have the agreement. So this is a checkbox, so we'll say checked equals agreement. And also when it changes, so on change, we're gonna do like an expression, and then we're gonna take an event, and we're gonna set agreement to event.target.checked. And then we need to say for the email here, so value equals email, and on change equals, gonna have an event, and then we're gonna set email to event.target.value. So you can just actually copy this and paste it here for the username. So this will be username. This needs to be uppercase U. And then we're gonna paste the same for the password. So this needs to be password, and here do uppercase P. All right, now we need to give the form itself a submit event, or like event handler thingy. So let's say on submit equals, let's just call it submit form, and let's create that here. So this will be const submit form, and this will be an async function that takes an event of type form event, and that should be imported. Yeah, it should be imported from React. And here, of course, first thing we need to say event.prevent default, so that it doesn't reload the page and doesn't add them as query strings. So here we can actually, let's install Axios so that we can interact with our backend better than fetch. So I'm gonna create a new terminal and cd into the client and do npm install Axios. I'm not sure if we need Axios types, but we'll see. So here, cool, so that's done. So let's say await Axios .get.post, and we could put like the entire URL, but what we can do, let's go to our app TSX. We can straight away here import Axios. So let's do that actually. Import from Axios, and here what we can say is Axios.defaults.base URL. Ooh, what is that? Base URL. I need to figure out these snippets because they always mess me up. So the base URL would be our server. So http://localhost 5000/API. So now that we've done this, we can just here say post to /auth/register, and you will know what the base URL is. So here what we want to post is this data that we have. So same thing that we did on Postman, basically, just send these three. So that will be email, not dot, comma, password, comma, username. So I should actually put that in some variable, and we see, so we can see the result. So let's say console.log. What is that? Okay, let me use the snippet. CLG res.data. And actually, I forgot this needs to be inside the try catch block. So try, put all of that, catch error, and let's just console log that error. And here we can say set errors and set error.response.data. Okay, this looks okay. Let's give it a try. Maybe I forgot something, maybe I didn't. Let's find out. So I'm gonna open the DevTools. So here, if I click sign up, okay, straight away there's an error. Okay, so this is a course error, and yeah, because I forgot to actually include course. So let's go back to our server root and say npm install course. And I actually forgot that we need types for course as well. So let's say npm install. So add types/course. All right, that's done. So let's go to our server.ts in our server source. And here at the top, let's import course from course. And here we'll say app.use course as a function like that. All right, save. Okay, the server is restarted, and my stomach is gurgling. Need to get some food. So let's go to Chrome, refresh this. And now if I send this request, cool, so we get bad request because now the request is going through without any course errors, and we get our validation errors. That's nice. What would be nicer is to actually show these errors on the form. So let's do that. So let's go back to our register TSX. So what we're going to do is we're just going to give this input a red. I think in Reddit is, if you do this, yeah, it does animation. Not animation. I didn't even want to say animation. It does validation on blur, which is something that I'm not going to do. It's just going to actually handle when it's submitted. So we get this red border, and we get this validation validation message, that's the word, under this input. So let's do the same here. So if we go back to our app, inside of our register TSX, so what we need to do is we need to check if we have, for example, here for email, if we have an errors.email key, that means we need to make this like invalid. And what we're going to use class names. So let's go import that. I believe it's installed by default with React. So let's import from class names, camel case it here. And let's scroll back down. So here we're going to provide this class unconditionally. I don't know why there's this white space here, but let's provide this class. So let's do an expression here. So class names, and provide this class. And then the second class, which will be conditional, would be border-red-500. And the condition here is simply errors.email. So if this key exists, this this class name should be added. So let's check. So here, okay, it's already there because the state now is persisted across different like renders. But let's try again. So if I send this, and by the way, let's open, I need to enable the DevTools. Okay, I've enabled the React DevTools now. So if we go to components, we can check the state. So we go to the register component. As you can see, if we type stuff, the state changes there. And now if I send this, we have in our state, we have our errors and email is empty. So that's cool. So now email is invalidated. We can add the message. So let's go. So underneath this input, we can add a small tag with a class of font medium. I already saw the style and written it down. So with the class also of text -red-500 or 600 rather. 500 is too bright. So here inside of that, we're gonna say errors.email. And what's cool about this, we don't have to care if it's not there, it's just not gonna show, which is cool. But if it's there, it's gonna say email is empty. Cool. And if I give one that exists already, just to test that it's working properly, we get email is already taken. Nice. So let's do the same for the rest of them. So actually, before we do the rest, the same rather for the rest of them, I would rather refactor this into its own component. Now, there are a couple of ways how you can do this. You can do this through a CSS file where you create a class for this and then you apply all the styles, which is something that you might have seen me do in the TailwindCSS tutorial that I've done a while ago. But if you have like a component library like React, you should take advantage of that and use components instead of just outsourcing the styles into a single class, which in like when you inspect, it kind of makes it difficult to know which styles are coming from where. So let's do that. So I'm actually gonna just cut this input. Or you know what, actually, let's do that for the entire input group. So this entire div should come from a component. So I'm actually gonna cut all of this email. Let's go to our file explorer. So inside the source, I'm going to create a new folder called components. And inside of there, I'm going to create an input group.tsx. And here we're going to have, so let's say const input group equals, and this will, let's just put the return statement first, so I don't by mistake copy something else. And let's give it the type of, so here we'll say type of react.fc. By default, React is imported into every Next component, so don't worry about importing it. So this will work, even though it looks confusing. And we're gonna need actually class names as well. So let's say import class names. And let's actually export this input group. So let's say export default input group. And so now these should come from the props. So actually, let's create an interface for the props, for the prop types. So let's say interface. You can use types as well, type as well, but you know, let's use just interfaces. It's simpler. So input group props. And what are we gonna get? So we need the value, we need the error, we need the setter, and we need the error. So that will be the same. And actually this needs to come from above because this can be different. So we need a class name for the wrapper div. So let's start with the class name for the wrapper div, which is optional. So let's do a question mark, and this is a string. So we're gonna need actually we need a type as well. So type, this will be a string and it's required. And we're gonna need a placeholder, and this will be a string. And we're gonna need the value. So this will be a string. We're gonna need an error. This can be a string or it can be also be undefined. So let's do pipe undefined, which is by the way a union type. So here we're gonna have a setter. So let's call it setValue, and this will be a function that takes a string of type string and doesn't return anything. It's just void. So here our input group will be of type. Not of type, we'll take props of type input group props. So we can destructure them inside of this argument. So you can do command space or control space and you can get all of this nice intelligence. I mean, it's just up there, but whatever. So actually let's get, oops, what is that? Class name, let's get the type, let's get the placeholder, and let's get the value. And also the error, and also the set value. I did this so I don't have to do like props dot whatever. All right, so here this should be just error, and this value should be value, and the placeholder now is dynamic, so that will be placeholder, and the type is also dynamic, so type is type. So here the error should be just error, and here this should be set value. All right, save this. And oh, I forgot the class name, so it should be here for the wrapper div, should be class name like that. So save, and let's go to the register and let's import that. Or maybe actually it's gonna auto import itself. So now we need to replace the email one. So let's say input group. Cool, that's imported itself. and we're gonna need, so let's start with the class name. So here this will be margin bottom 2, and what else do we need? We need the value. This will be email, and then we need the set value. This will be set email. What else do we need? I just already forgot. Yeah, here. So we need a placeholder and error. Yeah. So placeholder equals. Actually, this is a static. Hard coded. So this is the email. So the placeholder will be email, and we need error. This will be errors.email. I'm still missing one. Oh yeah, the type. Okay, so the type is email. Cool. So let's self-close this tag, and we can actually paste this 2 more times. So this will be MB2, that's fine. This will be text, and this will be not password. Actually, it's password. Yeah, username is second. So this will be text, and this will be username, and the setter will be set username. Placeholder will say uppercase username, and the error will be errors.username. And then we do the same for password. So actually for password is MB-4 because we want some space here. We don't want this space to be the same. So let's give it, where are we? So we are here. So MB-4, and this will be of type password. And the value will be password. The setter will be set password. And this placeholder will be password. And this will be errors.password. All right, so we can remove these two. So remove this and this, and everything should work exactly the same. Make sure obviously that it's imported at the top. I'm actually going to put a space here and remove class names and save, and let's check it out. All right, I'm going to reload, send a request. Cool. So we get the validation errors for all of them. And now if you want to change the styles, let's say you just change it in one place and that will apply everywhere. So we got that separation of concerns and abstraction, whatever buzzword you want to add on top of it. And let's now actually make it work. So I'm going to do an email that doesn't exist. So john123@email.com. And the username will be john123. And the password will be 1 through 6. Sign up. Okay. Usernames are really? It's already taken 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there's something wrong. Okay, let me check the network tab. Send this. Okay, so keep getting emails already taken. I'm pretty sure this wouldn't be taken. Okay, actually 1, 2, 3, 4 was taken. Wow. All right, so that was successful. But we need to redirect. Actually, yeah, after a request is successful, we need to redirect to the home page. But I just forgot one thing, actually. We need to make sure that we can't go through if this agreement is not actually ticked. We have it already bound to this, and it's changing the agreement value. So what we need to do, actually, after we submit the form, we can say here, if not agreement, then we're going to add an error. So we'll say set errors, and then give it, spread the existing errors, and then add agreement, and this will say you must agree to terms, or actually just T's and C's, so T and C's. That should be fine. And actually, yeah, we need to say return after, so we don't proceed with this. And we need to redirect after it's successful. So for this, we're going to use the next router. So let's go here at the top and say import from next/router. And actually we need a hook from this. So actually destructure use router. And here we'll say const router equals use router. And here after the successful request, we're going to say router.push. And we're just going to go to the, we're going to go to the login page because we need to log in after register. And let's not console log anything. We already did our test, so remove that. And actually, we don't need to have this in a variable, so just remove that. And let's test if this is working. Or actually, before we test, let's put a small tag after the checkbox to show the error. So similar to this, I'm not going to make that into its own component. I'm just going to grab this. And here, let's say small, blah, 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 errors dot, agreement. All right, save this and let's give it a test. So sign up. All right, so this needs to be like in a new line. So we could just give it a display block. So just say block. And there we go. So now it's in a new line. So if I don't agree, it doesn't even like send the form. But if I do agree, it's going to send the form. Cool. So now that validation error for agreement is gone, but now we have these validation errors for the form itself. And if I put, okay, I'm sure this doesn't exist, gibberish@email.com, and just some gibberish for username, and then a password. Let's actually do the validation of password. Cool. Okay, so 5 doesn't go through. 6, sign up. Nice. So that was successful, as you can see. Okay, you can't see it anymore because we got redirected to the new page, but the request is successful. Okay, let's actually create this login page because it takes like 2 seconds. It's exactly the same as the register. So we can actually copy the entire register. And let's go to our Explorer, create a new page. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Login.tsx, paste everything here. And we're going to change a couple of things. So start top to bottom. So these are fine. We don't need the email. We just need the username and the password. So remove agreement, keep errors. That's fine. Router. That's fine. And when you submit the form, we don't need to check agreement. That does not exist. And when we actually post, we post to /auth/login. And we don't need the email. We just send the username and the password. You can change the order if you want. And here, when we are successful, we redirect to the home page. So router.push just /. And here, actually, I don't know why we have this. I'm going to remove this from the register page. So remove this icon, because this will be in the document.tsx in the future. So I'm just going to remove that. And here, we're going to replace the title of the page with login. Remove this. So this is fine. That's the same image. And the title will be login. And here, by continuing, this is the same. So the form, that's the same. We remove this checkbox, so remove this div. And we also remove the input group for the email. We leave the username, and we leave the password, that's okay. And the button should say login. And here for the this small tag, so register. So this small tag will say, instead of saying already a Redditor, it should say new to Reddit. If so, then just go to /register, and this will say actually sign up. All right, so let's take a look at this. So let's go, actually, if we click now here, it should take us there, and it does. So cool. So we get this. Let's test if the validation is working. It is, and it's actually sending to login, not to register. So if I say John and the password, I put the wrong password, we get password is incorrect. And if I put some gibberish, okay, we should get the user is incorrect or like not valid. Okay, so we get error, user not found, but this should be username. All right, let me fix that. So in the auth.ts, in our routes, let's go to the login route, right? Yeah, right here. So it should say username, user not found. So save that, make sure your server is restarted, and let me refresh. I mean, I didn't need to refresh, but whatever. So let me put some gibberish here, send this. Okay, password must not be empty. Okay, that has the priority. Okay, send that. Cool, so user not found. Well, now let's say John and put like valid credentials, log in. Boom, and now we are logged in. And if we go ahead and check our application tab in the DevTools and go to cookies, okay, the cookie is not there. And that's because, let me check. Okay, actually, I forgot 2 things. The first thing is here, when we log in, we need to add some options in our Axios request and say with credentials and set that to true, which is an option that tells Axios, okay, the server can set, can set cookies on our machine, and we can also send cookies from our machine to the server. So we kind of trust the server, basically. And we also need to set up our course properly. So here inside of our server.ts, where we add the course middleware, we need to add some options. And here we have, you can do control space. So we need credentials, and that needs to be true. And we need, so when we use credentials true, we need to specify an origin or a list of origins, because we don't set cookies on any origin. And here, by the way, you can set here, just say HTTP localhost 3000, but I want to make it production friendly. So I'm going to open the .env file and here say origin like this. And so for development, our origin is http://local host 3000. So here in the server TS, we'll say origin equals process.env.origin. So in production, that would be different. That would be the actual domain name. And I'm going to actually give another option. Where is it? This options success status. And this basically is the status of a request that is sent before the request. It's an options request. And usually this returns a 204, but I'm going to give 200. And this is better for compatibility with some old browsers and some like other devices. Don't worry about it too much. All right, so make sure your server is restarted because we changed environment variables. So I'm just going to manually restart it just in case. So restart the server. All right, that's restarted. So let's go ahead and go back to the login page. And now if we log in, so I'll say John 1 through 6. All right, there we go. So we get a cookie set in our browser and it's actually the JWT token. And if we, let me make this bigger, look at the expiry. It's, why can't I? This is strange. Okay, let me make this bigger. All right, that's actually 1 hour from now. So that's cool. So the cookie is being set properly in our browser. And actually, I'm going to change something, like a little thing. So here in the login page, I'm going to remove this with credentials, remove the options, and go back to the app.tsx. And here we'll say axios.defaults.with credentials and set it globally to true. Because I know in the future we're going to send subsequent requests to fetch some stuff from the server and we want the cookies to be forwarded. So we want to always send cookies that we have on the client side. All right, so that's that for logging in and register. I know it was a bit too much, but we are done with authentication on the client side. And in the next one, we're going to start to work on the homepage because right now it's just a generic welcome to Next.js. So yeah, please do like this video and of course subscribe and hit the bell button if you haven't done so yet. And I will catch you in the next one. Cheers.